So in an article today in the New York Times, there is anxiety in Missoula, Montana over a book about to be published about campus sexual assaults. The local prosecutor wrote an urgent letter to the publishers of the book trying to delay its release, which I'm against. If somebody publishes a book, I think we should let them publish it. Booksellers are taking orders for copies that wait in sealed boxes ready to be opened Tuesday. Some people are dreading its revelations about rape in their football-loving college town. Others are glad. Tell the story, they say. The louder, the better. And much of it was hushed up. They think talking about is good. Yes. See, this sort of crosses into a gray area where they basically say, even if it's false, talking about it was good, even if there was no credible threat, we still should have talked about it and treated it with the level of severity as if there was a credible threat. And that includes ruining the lives of the accused before the jury is in, basically. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. That is a terrible stance to take. All these lynch mobs, these trial by fire justice systems that online media or social media enables these days is really a bad thing. The way people will just disregard the judicial system to, sort of go on a witch hunt to get these people who somebody says they did something wrong. It doesn't really matter if the accuser is credible or not, or even if they're known. I mean, anybody can make a bullshit anonymous claim, an allegation against somebody, and these people treat every one of them as if they are legit, because they believe that no matter regardless of whether or not the allegation is legitimate, talking about it is good, no matter how many lives it ruins. The book is being released weeks after Rolling Stone retracted. It was finally they retracted it because they published this article back in the middle of 2014, and they just finally retracted it now. After the jury was in, that there was actually no tangible evidence to support the allegation made by an anonymous Jackie. And then we had the whole hashtag I still support Jackie Twitter campaign, let's say it was. And it offers a 350-page counter-argument, supposedly, to assertions that large percentages of rape claims are false. Now, when I say assertions, they go to it links to a page on New Republic, which it sort of attacks men's rights activists. Your feelings on the MRM or the MRA may vary, but this article is very critical of them, and they see them only as trolls, basically, from Reddit, that there are actually no legitimate issues that they have. And they mention several leading names in the movement, and also leading boards on Reddit. But there was this interesting part that they said that it was shocking that a lot of people actually care. So to dismiss the MRM as merely misogynist and extreme would be to ignore the fact that their beliefs are shared by a troublingly large percentage of the American population. Why would that be troubling? I would think that would be quite indicative of perhaps your incorrect position on these issues. If a lot of people are rallying behind something, I mean, that should sort of indicate to you that there might be a legitimate problem here. But no, they are merely misinformed, am I right? So, this book, which the author considers a 350-page counter-argument to the assertions, according to that other article, that large percentages of rape claims are false. I don't know. I stick by the philosophy that any rape is bad, and we should be working to combat it as much as possible. But these egregiously false 1 in 4 statistics have got to stop, especially when there is strong evidence substantiating the contrary. If you happen to catch Christina Hoffman's discussion of the subject, where she points out that recent studies have shown that it's closer to 1 in 40, not 1 in 4. But Missoula is no stranger to scrutiny. The rash of assaults and high-profile trials have been front-page news here since 2011. So who isn't talking about it exactly? These are high-profile trials, and apparently they have been front-page news. So it would lead me to believe that we have been talking about it. It's just Justice Department or our courts have decided there is really nothing credible behind these allegations. The Justice Department reached agreements with the University of Montana and the Missoula Police Department to improve their responses to sexual assaults. The Justice Department lacerated the county attorney's office for low rates of rape prosecutions and says its attitudes and policies towards sexual assaults place, quote, the safety of all women in Missoula at risk. It later reached a separate agreement with the county attorney's office. If the allegations aren't credible, do we still continue with the prosecution? I mean, if you can tell it is obviously, or not obviously, but if there's probable cause to believe that it is false, why would you follow up on that? I know it's very subjective, but even then, it's like we have any allegation. It's sort of overboard in a way that airport security and the like was after 9/11, where we just cranked up the security to high notch, sort of a police state, and it does deprive people of personal liberty when we have a all-controlling government dictating what you can and cannot do, and basically any perceived threat is treated as a credible threat. But a major new book with an initial print running of 500,000 copies and the town's name in capital letters on the jacket has everybody understandably up in arms. Well, they stirred passionate discussions, even though people have yet to see it. There have been a flood of weekly articles, and there was a weekly Missoula Independent article anticipating a flood of negative attention titled 12 Reasons to Love Missoula Right Now. So yeah, basically damage control. Like many people in the town, Kathy Scribner, a hospice chaplain who has lived here for 10 years, said her back went up when she first saw the title. She said she wanted a vigorous discussion about the dark currents of assault and entitlement, because every rape is the direct result of an entitled male. That is the narrative that feminism has been pushing for the last who knows how many years. She wanted a vigorous discussion about the dark currents of assault and entitlement in this picturesque mountain town, but she wondered why the title. Rape, she said, is a part of every town story, which is true, more or less. So as you can see, it was designed to sort of defame this town in the same way we have defamed let's say the men who've been accused in articles such as the Rolling Stone. They've sort of, what would you call it? Crucified them. They've sort of crucified this town as being the one where rape is obviously out of control, and I don't believe it is necessarily indicative, contrary to his assertions, that this was as uniform throughout all college campuses as he seems to believe, especially given the fact that this is such a small sample size. Its rape statistics, this town of Missoula, may be on par with similar college-sized towns, but Mr. Krakauer says that is what is so disturbing. The number of sexual assaults in Missoula might sound alarming, but if the FBI figures are accurate, it's actually commonplace. That is pretty loose wording, I have to say. Commonplace, because there are figures that range from, say, 1 in 4 to 1 in 40. Now, who's right? Because the FBI figures, correct me if I'm wrong, but they take into account rapes that aren't necessarily substantiated in any way, and they also try to anticipate the number that go unreported. Now, it's dubious at best that someone can try to attempt to define how many of anything goes unreported. But as it turns out, rape culture in the United States is obviously a thing. In addition to telling several young women's stories of assault, because personal anecdotes supersede any and all studies performed, polls by anybody, right? You have a couple of anecdotes, personal anecdotes, yep, it's completely legit now. There's no possible confirmation bias by any of these people telling the stories. In addition to telling several young women's stories of assault, the book is fortified by investigative reports, accounts of police interviews, and transcripts of college disciplinary hearings that give a moment-by-moment account of the uncomfortable realities of reporting sex crimes. Because in that article we were looking at earlier by New Republic, attacking the MRM or MRA, it seems that there was an anonymous board that anybody could post sexual assault claims on. And that is never going to be abused. I mean, when you give somebody the right to post anonymously, they would never, no one would ever abuse that system, right? I'm sure every single one of the reports in there were 100% legit and should be treated as such. Well, not exactly, because people troll such boards. When you are anonymous on the internet, it gives you the perfect blanket to troll people, to make shit up. Now, back to the New York Times article, some of the women say the police asked them whether they had boyfriends. Heaven forbid, suggesting the rape reports were sometimes an effort to mask an infidelity. Yeah, I mean, why would we try to gather all the background information behind the rape? That's irrelevant. Why should we have to answer that question? You are clearly insinuating that we're just bullshitting to mask infidelity. That would never happen. A woman would never do that. I say, go out there, gather as much information as humanly possible, and make an informed decision on these cases. This whole notion that asking too in-depth questions is going to result in people not coming forward to report them is very contrary to the democratic society which we pride ourselves with. Time after time, police and prosecutors warn that the women that the process is excruciating with no guarantee of success. Okay, that's interesting. Should every rape allegation be guaranteed success? No. Are you fucking kidding me, mate? Never. We have a court, a judicial system in place where we review the evidence and an informed decision is reached by a jury of peers. This is the police state mentality again. And the process is excruciating because dragging up details of such a mentally traumatic incident is naturally going to be excruciating. It's a fair warning. It's not saying that you shouldn't report it, I don't think, in any way. It's just being honest. And social justice warriors and feminists don't like reality. They don't like honesty. It hurts too much. They should be shielded from it. Some current and former officials for Missoula's police and for the county attorney's office have been criticized with Mr. Croker's for not interviewing them. Because, why would you bother get both sides of the story when you're being as unbiased as possible, right, Mr. Croker? Oh, that's right. You probably have a confirmation bias going here for you. But the chief deputy says that Mr. Croker recreates through the scene that Mr. Croker recreates through a transcript. She provides supportive testimony during a university's disciplinary hearing for a student accused. Remember, this is just a student accused. This defense attorney, this chief deputy prosecutor, said she went to the hearing to explain facts and legal procedures, was not there as an advocate for the suspect. Naturally. But your motives, however well-intended, if they are perceived to benefit or to work to the detriment of a narrative, will be considered confrontational and adversarial. I'm not even sure that's a word. Okay. Last month, the former deputy chief prosecutor, now elected county attorney, wrote to Doubleday, the book's publisher, seeking to delay its release and criticizing what she characterized as serious deficiencies in Mr. Croker's reporting, including that he chose not to interview me. Quote, chose not to interview me. Mr. Croker said he had sent a detailed list of questions and that were never answered. That is not really an excuse for an interview. When you look at the past of some of the criticisms are justified. Did we miss things? Sure, we regret that. I regret that, but we are willing to learn from these things and we want to move forward, said the now elected county attorney, Mrs. Pabst. Mr. Croker said in an interview that he had thoughtfully and carefully reported the book. Well, I'm glad he gave it some thought at least. Bill Thomas, publisher and editor-in-chief of Doubleday, said he hoped the book would redirect the public discourse surrounding campus rape. The national conversation in the last several months has been focused on these very small numbers of false accusations. Oh, gee whiz. I wonder why they went so mainstream. If it's just very small numbers. I mean, it's not like 1 in 4 or anything, is it? He said it's terrible that a small number of men were falsely accused, but this book is about the hundreds of thousands of women that have been sexually assaulted. I believe it was about the personal anecdotes of a few, but okay, I haven't read the book. I can't really make a judgment call on that. Most of the stories in Missoula do not end with prison terms. Well, when you go to a one-sided source for your story, you are liable to get a different story than going to the other side. So, if they didn't end in prison terms, does that mean that the judge or the jury was merely lenient in sentencing, or does it mean that the accused was acquitted? Because there is a distinct there's a distinct difference between the two, and it is important, but they don't really go into that. Mr. Croker recounts the trial of a Grizzlies quarterback who was acquitted of charges that he had raped an acquaintance. He was acquitted. But you believe that he was wrongly acquitted, that he was actually guilty, right? In a separate case, a woman named Kesley Belknap describes a gang rape by a group of Grizzlies players, none of whom were criminally charged, though one was expelled and another barred from campus, which is sort of suspicious in and of itself. But again, it is not necessarily indicative of the credibility of this allegation, because if we look at the Duke Lacrosse case, that was also a woman who preferred anonymity, but in this case she actually came forward, who described something which was not corroborated by actual evidence. Carrie Barrett, then a college senior, recounts being assaulted in September 2011. Again, these, like I said, these are all personal anecdotes. After going home with another student she met at a downtown bar, so they might have been a bit tipsy, and they engaged in kissing, foreplay, until he got, quote, a little aggressive. Now, as we saw with the last video I did, a little aggressive could basically mean a man crying to a woman. So, what does a little aggressive mean? Did he spank her? I have no idea. He could have just been crying to her. That would probably raise her hackles, like, man, this man is trying to rape me. Miss Barrett told him to stop, that she did not want to have sex. She put her clothes on, and then quite stupidly stayed over, because she was leery of walking home at 3 a.m. And you know what? She should be respected for that. I'm not saying if this man did what he's been accused of doing, there's no way this is justified. But she said she woke up to find that the man naked had pulled down her pants and was trying to have sex with her. And she pushed him away and fled. Now, I don't know if they were sleeping together or not, but even so, it's simply anecdotal, and it doesn't prove anything. I think that's the biggest point I would like to make here. When Miss Barrett went to the police, a detective warned her that she had a tough case because she and the man were the only witnesses. Again, when the police says, look, this is going to be hard to prosecute, they're telling you the truth, and you say, you know, don't bring me to reality here. I want you to tell me everything's going to be okay. It doesn't matter if you have to lie to me. Just tell me. Let me know everything is going to be okay, right? Because the man cried when police questioned him. I told you, these aggressive men crying. What the fuck? That's obvious. I mean, there was never a woman who was let off the hook when she cried to the jury or the prosecutor, right? Oh, wait. But apparently it's wrong when men do it, and that's the only reason the police let him go, is because he cried, right? And said that he had not assaulted Miss Barrett. But yeah, because anybody can make that allegation. The detective investigating her report told the man that, quote, I don't think you did anything wrong, and closed the case without filing criminal charges. Yes, because a judgment call has to be made in a case that relies solely on personal testimony. If all that you have is one person's word against another's, who are you going to believe? Now, of course, in modern or contemporary circles, you are expected to always believe the woman. But if the police decided that this man appeared more credible, it's a judgment call. There's really no way to tell. But I do not believe that he should have been brought up on charges if you can't prove. I mean, there's the whole burden of proof associated with accusations. If you cannot supply the evidence when the burden of proof is on you, then your allegation or your allegation, it sort of goes out the window. I mean, I can accuse anybody of doing something, and if I can't substantiate that claim, should I be taken seriously? I don't think there are bad people with bad intentions, Miss Barrett said in a telephone interview. I don't think they understand the reality of acquaintance rape. Now, I believe she's talking about the police station here. And what do they mean, the reality of it? I don't think anyone denied that it's happening. They just said it's hard to prosecute something based solely on personal testimony. They interviewed both and decided that it wasn't actually credible. She left Missoula in June 2012 and is pursuing a career working on sexual assault issues, which it does lend some credence to her story, but it's not at all infallible, or it doesn't make it a closed case on that. in that regard. She has not been back, but next month Mr. Crocker is coming here to give a talk, and Miss Barrett says she was planning to attend. People don't want Missoula to be synonymous with rape, but that's what it is for me, she said. When I think of Missoula, I think of my assault. That pretty much concludes the article. It'll be interesting to see what happens when this book actually comes out, to have people analyze it and possibly refute the author's allegations and assertions. So, thank you for listening, and until next time, farewell.